After years of being criticized for my pointless career, Dad said, "From now on, you'll pay rent." So I packed and left. Days later, Mom texted, "Rent's due. Where are you?" I ignored it. You won't believe what they did next. My name is Clara Hayes. I'm 28 years old. And for most of my adult life, my family treated me like a defective board in a stack of perfect lumber, something warped, inconvenient, and embarrassing to keep around. I grew up in a house where sawdust was practically a religion. My father, Robert Hayes though, everyone called him Bobby, built his custom carpentry business back in the 90s. High-end kitchen cabinets, walnut dining tables, built-ins for rich couples, who used words like artisan, while standing in houses bigger than churches. Dad acted like he had personally invented craftsmanship. Like measuring twice and cutting once was a sacred commandment handed down to him alone. And if you did anything outside woodwork, he looked at you like you had announced you wanted to juggle knives for grocery money. My mother, Celeste, never yelled first. That was her gift. She sighed. She pressed one hand to her chest. She blinked slowly. Like every decision I made personally shortened her lifespan by a few months. Then there was my younger sister, Marisa, the golden child. She joined Dad's carpentry business right after high school. And from that moment on, she became proof that I was the broken daughter. Dad praised her instincts, her discipline, her respect for tradition. If Marissa sanded a table leg, you would think she had restored the Sistine Chapel. Me, I worked with metal. I started at 17, in my friend Alan's garage. Welding exhaust pipes for gas money. Then I learned custom railings, decorative steelwork, aluminum frames, commercial fabrication, gates, staircases, shelving systems, anything strong enough to hold weight and beautiful enough to make people stop and stare. I loved metal because it told the truth. Heat it wrong. It warped. Cut it careless. It showed, but respect it. Learn it. Shape it with patience. And it became something almost impossible to break. Dad hated that. Cold and soulless. He called it, as if his wood had a heartbeat, and my steel didn't. Sunday dinners at our house were just mind games served with gravy. Dad sat at the head of the table, carving meat like he was planning an execution. Mom floated around with serving dishes, sighing whenever the room got tense. Marisa sat beside him, smiling into her mashed potatoes every time he took a swing at me. "So, Clara," Dad would say, never looking directly at me. "Any real work this week, or more playing around with scrap metal?" "It's not scrap metal," I'd answer, keeping my voice flat. Marissa would tilt her head. "You're so sensitive." "He's just asking." No, he wasn't. He was reminding me where I stood. I lived in the converted garage apartment behind their house. It had a tiny kitchen, a bathroom with bad water pressure, and just enough space to sleep beside the drafting table, where I sketched designs late at night. They had fixed it up after I finished trade school and told everyone it was family, helping family. But family help in my house always came with invisible hooks. They said it was temporary, while I found my footing. What they meant was, until I gave up, until I admitted Dad was right, until I put down my welding torch, walked into his shop, and became the daughter he could understand. The thing was, I wasn't failing. I had steady clients, repeat customers, good checks. I paid for my truck, my equipment, my materials, my insurance. I saved money every month. The only thing I wasn't paying was rent, because they had insisted I didn't need to. Family supports family, Mom always said, but support was never free. It was a leash wrapped in kindness. For months, the comments got sharper. "When are you going to grow up? Metalwork is a phase. You'd make more if you joined the real business. Your sister understands legacy." I kept thinking, if I worked hard enough, if I stayed calm enough, If I brought home enough proof, they would finally see me. That was the stupidest hope I ever carried. Because the problem was never my career. It was control. The night everything changed started like every other Sunday dinner from hell. Dad was at the head of the table, cutting into his steak. Mom was fussing with the salad bowl. Acting like the emotional health of the family depended on whether everyone had enough dressing. Marissa was scrolling on her phone, half listening, waiting for her cue to pile on. I was trying to eat quickly because I had a huge project due Monday morning. A custom steel and aluminum reception desk for a law firm downtown. Built-in cable management. Powder-coated finish. Clean geometric lines. $4,000 for 2 weeks of work. Dad noticed I was mentally gone before I said a word. So, he said, dragging the knife through his steak. Any real work lined up this week? I swallowed. I'm finishing a commercial project. He snorted. What is it this time? A fancy fence? A reception desk? Marissa laughed under her breath. I looked at her. Something funny. She lifted both hands. No. It's just... a metal desk sounds uncomfortable. Dad smiled like she had said something brilliant. I should have stopped talking. But I didn't. The client is paying $4,000. I said. It's custom work. Precision cuts. Welded frame. Hidden wiring. Powder-coated finish. Dad leaned back. $4,000 for bending metal bars. The room went still. Mom whispered. Bobby. But she didn't stop him. He pointed his fork at me. You know what real money looks like. Repeat customers. Referrals. Building something that lasts generations. What you make is trendy junk. 5 years from now, they'll replace it with something else. Marissa shrugged. Dad's not wrong. Anyone can weld things together. Something hot rose in my throat. I wanted to tell her that she had never built anything without Dad standing 3 feet away, correcting her mistakes. I wanted to tell Dad that my work was in offices, restaurants, homes, and storefronts all over town. I wanted to ask Mom why she only ever looked wounded when I defended myself. Never when they cut me down. But Dad spoke first. All right, he said. His voice changed. Cold. Finel, from now on, you'll cover your own rent. Mom froze. Marissa stopped chewing. Dad folded his arms. No more freebies. You want to play metalworker, then act like a real businesswoman. Rent's due at the end of the week. Nobody moved. For a second, all I heard was the hum of the refrigerator and the blood rushing in my ears. It wasn't about rent. I knew that immediately. I could pay rent. I probably made more that week than Marissa made in a month. This was punishment. A test. A trap dressed up as responsibility. He wanted me scared. He wanted me desperate. He wanted me to come crawling into his shop and say, You were right. Dad, please teach me real work. So I did the one thing he didn't expect. I nodded. Okay. That was it. Just okay. Dad blinked. Like I had skipped my line in a play he had rehearsed for years. Mom looked at me, waiting for tears. Marissa's mouth opened slightly. I disappointed that there wouldn't be a show. I finished my dinner. I helped clear the plates. Then I said, Have a good night, and walked back to the garage apartment. The second I closed the door, I stood in the silence and felt something inside me break loose. Not break, unlock. I looked around at the little apartment they had always called a gift. The cracked tile, the low ceiling, the boxes of old family junk shoved into one corner because even my living space doubled as their storage. And suddenly I understood. They had never been helping me stand. They had been keeping me close enough to pull back. That night, I didn't sleep. I packed. Clothes first. Tools next. Sketchbooks. Invoices. Client files. The framed certificate from trade school that Dad had never once acknowledged. Every box felt like removing a weight from my ribs. By sunrise, Alan was backing a small trailer into the driveway. You sure? He asked quietly. I looked at the house. The curtains in Mom's bedroom moved. She was watching. Yes. I said. I'm sure. I left no note. No goodbye. No forwarding address. I locked the garage apartment, climbed into my truck, and drove away from the only home I had ever known. For the first time in years, I could breathe. The new shop wasn't much to look at. A 1,200 square foot industrial unit on the other side of town. Faded gray walls, concrete floors, and a landlord named Hector, who cared about exactly two things: paying on time and not setting the building on fire. To me, it looked like freedom. For the first week, I barely thought about my family. I set up my equipment exactly where I wanted it. I organized my materials without someone criticizing my methods. I worked late into the night, with music playing, and nobody asking when I planned to get a real job. It was incredible. I slept better than I had in years. I finished my law firm's reception desk ahead of schedule and landed another commercial project because the client loved my work. For 10 whole days, my phone stayed quiet. No criticism, no guilt, no lectures. I almost started believing maybe this was it. Maybe Dad had finally decided I wasn't worth the fight. Maybe Mom would stop pretending to be caught in the middle. Maybe Marissa would go back to basking in being the perfect daughter. I should have known better. People like my father don't let go of control. The text arrived on a Wednesday morning while I was cutting steel plate. From Mom. Rent's due. Where are you? I stared at the screen for nearly a minute, then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. I had been gone for 10 days. 10. No one had asked if I was okay. No one had asked where I moved. No one had wondered whether I had enough money or if I was safe. But suddenly they cared about rent. I set my phone down and went back to work. Another text came 20 minutes later. Did you forget what day it is? An hour later, your father expects you to handle your responsibilities. Then, we can't carry dead weight anymore. Time to step up. I actually stopped cutting when I read that. Step up. That phrase had followed me my entire life. When I didn't want to spend weekends sanding cabinets. Step up. When I chose welding classes. Step up. When I started my business. Step up and stop being selfish. I didn't answer. By Friday, the messages were becoming more aggressive. You owe this family. You can't run away forever. Your sister is working extra because of your choices. That one made me laugh again. Marissa lived rent-free in the main house and worked for a business she'd eventually inherit. Extra because of me. Please. I ignored everything. Then Saturday afternoon, my phone rang. Marissa. I considered letting it go to voicemail. Instead, I answered. Hello. Where the hell are you? She snapped. Not hi. Not, are you okay? Just accusations. I'm working. You're supposed to pay rent. Dad's furious. I closed my eyes. I don't live there anymore. Silence. Then she laughed. That same smug little laugh she'd perfected since childhood. You think you can just leave? I did leave. You don't get to walk away from this family. I looked around my shop, the sunlight coming through the windows, the welding table, the projects waiting for me. For the first time, I realized I actually had. I moved out. I said calmly, I have my own place now. That's ridiculous. No. It's reality. You can't just disappear because things got hard. I nearly dropped the phone. Hard for who? Marissa. What? You live in the main house. Dad worships you. You're inheriting a successful business. Which part of your life is hard? She became quiet. Then her voice sharpened. You think you're better than us now? No. Yes. You do. No. I think I'm tired. She didn't answer. I continued. I'm tired of defending my career. I'm tired of being the family disappointment. I'm tired of pretending this is normal. You're being dramatic. I learned from Mom. A stunned silence. Then, you need to come home. No. You don't mean that. I looked at the welding torch on my workbench. Actually, I did. I do. She lowered her voice. Dad says, if you don't get your act together, don't bother coming back. I swallowed. A strange feeling settled over me. Not pain, not fear, relief. Then I guess we understand each other. I hung up. A few minutes later, I cried. Not because I missed them, Because I'd spent 28 years chasing approval from people who had no intention of giving it. The texts kept coming. Mom tried guilt. Your father is devastated. Please don't abandon your family. Think about your sister. This stress is hurting all of us. Then Dad texted, if you can't handle adult responsibilities, I don't expect to be treated like an adult. Another one. We've invested in you for years. You owe us. There it was again. Investment. As if raising a child was some kind of business loan. I blocked the number. An hour later, Mom texted from hers. We need to talk. I blocked her too. 3 days later, someone knocked on the shop door. I looked through the window. My stomach dropped. Dad. Arms crossed. Work jacket on. Expression hard enough to cut steel. I turned off my welder and stepped outside. I kept the doorway between us. Clara. Dad. We need to talk. I don't think we do. He ignored that, the rent situation. I almost smiled. Still on that. This little stunt ends now. I moved out. You abandoned your responsibilities. I folded my arms. I don't owe rent on a place I don't live. He shook his head. That apartment was family support. Then why does it suddenly come with a bill? His jaw tightened. You don't get to walk away from family obligations. I finally understood something. He genuinely didn't believe I was allowed to leave. In his mind, children never stopped belonging to him. I started my own life. I said quietly, no. He stepped closer. You ran away. No. I grew up. His eyes narrowed. You've always been ungrateful. I almost laughed. Ungrateful. For years of criticism. For never being enough. For love with conditions. Maybe. I said softly. You shouldn't treat support like a leash. He looked stunned. Then angry. Watch your mouth. I'm done being afraid of you. The words surprised both of us. His face changed. For a second, I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Because I wasn't arguing. I wasn't apologizing. I wasn't trying to win. I was leaving. And he couldn't stop me. You'll regret this, he said. Maybe. You won't make it without family. I looked around my shop. At my equipment. At the projects waiting for me. At the business I had built myself. I guess we'll find out. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said something that chilled me. One way or another, you'll pay what you owe. I felt my stomach tighten. That wasn't a father speaking. That was a man making a threat. Go home. Dad. You'll come crawling back. No. He stared at me. Then he turned and walked away. As he reached the parking lot, I noticed another vehicle. Mom's car. She had been sitting there the entire time. Watching. Waiting. I stood in the doorway, long after they drove away. The shop suddenly felt colder. Something had changed. This wasn't about rent anymore. This wasn't about disappointment. This was about control. And I had just taken away the one thing my father couldn't stand losing. Me. I didn't know it yet. But the real war was only beginning. For the next few days, I waited. I knew my father too well. Men like him don't accept losing control. They regroup. They plan. They punish. The first messages came from Mom. Your father is heartbroken. Please just pay the rent and come home. This family misses you. Then, your sister is under so much stress because of this. And finally, don't throw away your family over pride. I didn't respond. Then one morning, I arrived at my shop and found an envelope slipped under the door. Mom's handwriting. Inside was a letter. Clara. This is your final warning. If you continue ignoring your family obligations, we will have no choice but to take further action. You are part of this family, whether you accept it or not. Do the right thing. I read it twice. Then I laughed. Further action. What exactly were they planning? Send me to my room. I tossed the letter onto my desk. 2 hours later, my phone rang. Hector. My stomach tightened. Everything okay? He sounded uncomfortable. Actually, your father stopped by this morning. I straightened in my chair. What? He asked questions about your lease. Your payments. Whether you've been having financial difficulties. I felt cold. I didn't tell him anything. Hector added quickly. But I figured you should know. Thank you. I hung up and stared at the wall. Dad wasn't trying to get me home anymore. He was trying to interfere with my business. That afternoon, I called Alan. You're not going to believe this. By the end of my story, he was quiet. Then he said, Clara, that's insane. I know. No. I mean, actually insane. I wished he was wrong. Over the next week, strange things started happening. A potential client suddenly canceled a consultation. A supplier called asking if I was having money problems. Another customer, who had seemed excited about a project, simply stopped answering emails. Little things. But together they formed a pattern. Then Alan called again. My cousin works at First County Bank. He said, Okay. An older man came in asking questions about your business account. I sat upright. What? He claimed to be your father, and said he was worried about your financial situation. I closed my eyes. I suddenly couldn't breathe. He was trying to destroy me. Not punish me. Destroy me. I spent that entire evening pacing my shop. The welding torch remained untouched. For years, I thought Dad wanted what was best for me. Maybe twisted, maybe controlling, but still. Love. Now I saw the truth. He would rather watch me fail than succeed without him. That realization hurt more than anything else. 2 days later, things got worse. I was welding support brackets for a custom gate when I heard vehicles outside. I looked through the window. Dad's truck. And behind it, Marissa's pickup. I walked outside. My stomach dropped. Marissa was taking photographs. The building. My equipment. The materials stacked beside the wall. Dad stood nearby with a clipboard. A clipboard. As if he were conducting an inspection. What are you doing? I demanded. Dad looked up calmly. Documenting safety concerns. What? This place doesn't appear properly suited for metal fabrication. Marissa smirked. Somebody should probably report it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You've got industrial equipment here. She continued. I wonder if the city knows. I stared at them. This wasn't family drama. This was sabotage. Get off my property. Dad smiled. This is what happens when you bite the hand that fed you. The words hit like a slap. He was enjoying this. Actually, enjoying it? Leave. I said, no. I pulled my phone from my pocket. The second he saw it, his expression changed. I pressed record. I am asking both of you to leave my property. Marissa lowered her phone. Dad's smile disappeared. Put that away. I'm documenting harassment. You can't threaten us. I'm not threatening anyone. I raised the camera. I'm recording 2 people trespassing and interfering with my business. Silence. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. Because evidence changes everything, family arguments become facts. Manipulation becomes harassment. Dad stepped back. This isn't over. No. I said, I don't think it is. They left. I stood there shaking. Not from fear. From anger. I had spent my entire life trying to earn their love. And now they were trying to destroy my livelihood. That night, I called my friend Diego. He owned an auto repair shop and had once gone through a bitter split with his own family. Install cameras, he said immediately. Everywhere. Everywhere. And document everything. The next day, I did exactly that. Front entrance, parking lot, storage area, workshop floor, every inch of the property. 3 days later, the cameras paid for themselves. They caught Marissa slowly driving past my shop, twice. The following morning, another potential customer canceled. This time, I pressed for details. Someone called. The man admitted. They said you had complaints against your business. My heart sank. Did they say who they were? They claimed to be a former customer. I knew immediately. Dad. That afternoon, City Code Enforcement called. We received a complaint regarding your business operations. I almost laughed. Everything was properly permitted. Everything. The inspection didn't scare me. The intention behind it did. The harassment was escalating. Then my cameras caught something else. Dad and Marissa, sitting in a parking lot across the street, watching, for nearly 3 hours. They weren't even hiding anymore. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning. I pulled into the parking lot and froze. My front window was covered in red spray paint. Scam artist. Cheats, customers. For several seconds, I couldn't move. Then I checked the cameras. The footage was crystal clear. At 2 in the morning, Dad's truck pulled up. Marissa got out carrying a can of spray paint. I watched her vandalize my shop. I watched Dad stand nearby. I watched them leave. When the video ended, I sat down in my office chair and cried. Not because of the paint, not because of the money, because my own family had crossed a line I never thought possible. When I finally stopped crying, I picked up my phone. I called the police. That afternoon, I met Detective Maria Cruz. She watched every video, read every text, listened to every voicemail. Then she looked at me. This isn't a family disagreement anymore. I swallowed. No. It's harassment. Stalking. Vandalism. I nodded. And it may get worse. That terrified me. Because deep down, I knew she was right. For the next week, I documented everything. Every message. Every phone call. Every strange incident. Every canceled client. The evidence kept growing. Then one of my steel suppliers called. Someone, claiming to be your father, contacted us. I closed my eyes. What did he say? That you're having financial problems and may not be able to pay your bills? I leaned back in my chair. I suddenly felt exhausted. This had become his mission. If he couldn't control me, he would ruin me. The next morning, Detective Cruz helped me file for emergency restraining orders. Against my father. Against my sister. I never imagined those words would one day exist in my life. But there they were. The court date was set for the following week. I thought things couldn't get any worse. I was wrong. 2 days before the hearing, I arrived at my shop and found the front door slightly open. My blood ran cold. I stepped inside. Nothing had been stolen. Instead, everything had been destroyed. Welding cables cut. Materials ruined. Computer files deleted. Metal shavings poured into project supplies. This wasn't theft. It was a message. The security cameras had been spray painted, but not before capturing one final image. A pickup truck. Marissa's. I stared at the screen. Then I realized something. They had finally gone too far. This wasn't a family war anymore. This was criminal. And for the first time since leaving home, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. The morning of the hearing, I walked into the courthouse carrying a thick, black binder. Every page inside it represented another line my family had crossed. Photographs, screenshots, police reports, witness statements, security footage, financial records showing canceled contracts and lost income. I hadn't slept much the night before. But I wasn't nervous anymore. I was tired. Tired of being afraid. Tired of hoping people would become who they had never been. Detective Maria Cruz met me outside the courtroom. You ready? She asked. I looked at the binder. As ready as I'll ever be. She smiled. Good. Because you've got one hell of a case. A few minutes later, they arrived. Dad, Mom, Marissa, and an expensive-looking attorney in a dark blue suit. Dad wouldn't look at me. Mom looked like she had been crying. Marissa looked pale. For a second, I saw my little sister instead of the woman who had spray-painted my windows and helped sabotage my business. Then I remembered the videos, the lies, the threats, the broken equipment. The feeling of standing in my vandalized shop. The sympathy disappeared. The hearing started. Their lawyer tried to paint the entire situation as a misunderstanding, a family conflict that unfortunately escalated. A concerned father, a worried sister, a daughter who had overreacted. Then the judge watched the videos. Marissa spray painting my storefront. Dad taking photographs outside my shop. Text messages, demanding money. Threats. Police reports. The room became very quiet. Their lawyer's expression slowly changed. He realized there was no way to explain any of this. The judge closed the file. Then she looked directly at my father. Mr. Hayes. This is not a family disagreement. Dad swallowed. This is harassment. She looked at Marissa. And this is vandalism. Neither of them said a word. The judge issued restraining orders immediately. No contact. No approaching my home or business. No contacting clients, suppliers, or associates. 500 feet of distance at all times. Any violation would result in immediate arrest. Then came the financial judgment. Restitution. Damaged equipment. Lost business. Legal expenses. Nearly $15,000. Dad looked like someone had punched him. Marissa looked sick. Mom quietly cried. I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. The hearing ended. As people began leaving the courtroom, Mom suddenly stood. Clara? I froze. The bailiff immediately stepped between us. She looked broken. Honey. Please. I hadn't heard her call me honey in years. Please, don't do this. I stared at her. Don't do what? This family can still be fixed. I almost laughed. Fixed. She still didn't understand. The family had been broken long before I left. I didn't do this. I said quietly. Her face crumpled. Your father? No. I shook my head. You all did. Tears slid down her cheeks. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel responsible for them. I turned around and walked away. Outside the courthouse, Detective Cruz stopped me. You okay? I looked up at the sky. The sun felt warm. I hadn't noticed that in a while. I think so. She smiled. You should be proud of yourself. I didn't answer, because proud wasn't the word. Free was. The fallout came quickly. Apparently, people in our town loved gossip. Within days, everyone knew the story. The respected family carpentry business that had tried to destroy their own daughter's company, clients started asking questions. Old customers got uncomfortable. 3 major contracts disappeared. Then another, and another. The rumors spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, my business began receiving attention. The local business community rallied around me. Dylan, an electrical contractor, Alan introduced me to, started sending clients my way. Diego recommended me to everyone he knew. A local architect hired me for a custom staircase, then another, and another. One afternoon, a local newspaper called. A reporter wanted to interview me. I almost said no. Instead, I agreed. The article was titled, Metalworker Overcomes Family Sabotage to Build Thriving Business. I hated the title, but I couldn't deny what happened next. The phone started ringing. Constantly. I couldn't keep up. New clients. New projects. New opportunities. 3 months later, I hired my first assistant, a young woman named Emma, who had just graduated from trade school. She reminded me of myself. Determined. Nervous. Hungry to prove herself. 6 months later, I moved into a larger facility. 3,000 square feet. Better ventilation. Overhead cranes. Space for new equipment. I finally bought the CNC plasma cutter I had dreamed about for years. The first night inside the new shop, I stayed late by myself. I walked slowly across the concrete floor, touched the new equipment, looked at everything I had built. Then I sat down and cried, not from sadness, from relief, because I had done it. Without my father's approval, without the family business, without becoming the daughter they wanted, I had become the woman I wanted. I heard updates about my family through Alan. Their business struggled. The legal expenses hurt. The lost contracts hurt even more. Several employees left. Eventually, it was just Dad and Marissa trying to keep things alive. Mom wanted him to sell the company. He refused. Apparently, he had aged years in only a few months. I didn't feel happy hearing that. I didn't feel guilty either. I simply felt distant. Like they belonged to another lifetime. One evening, nearly a year after I left home, I locked up my shop and stood in the parking lot. The sun was setting. The metal of the building glowed orange. Emma had gone home. The machines were quiet. Everything was peaceful. I thought about that night at dinner. The moment Dad looked at me and said, "From now on, you'll pay rent." He had meant it as punishment, as control, as a threat. Instead, it became a gift. Because if he had never said those words, I might still be living behind their house, still begging for approval, still believing I was the problem. Sometimes the people who try hardest to break you accidentally set you free. I never spoke to my father again. I never saw Marissa again. The restraining orders remained in place. As far as I was concerned, The family I grew up with ended the day they decided to destroy my future instead of letting me live my own life. And honestly, that was okay, because I finally understood something. The strongest things I have ever built were never made from steel. They were made from boundaries.